Hello, this is Chris Sisson speaking, Community Web Consultant, and welcome to the second webinar in my series about the local economy. If you are listening to this either in the live broadcast or in the replay, you can comment in the box below the video. You can do that at any time. During the live video, I will check the comments after I finish, and then for the replay, I will occasionally go back to the page and check, and you'll get written replies to the comments. So, let's make a start. This talk will take about 20 minutes, and following that, as I said, there will be an opportunity for you to comment. Last time, I talked about the relationship between business and community, the benefits communities get from business involvement, and the benefits that businesses get from being involved in the community. What I want to do today is to look at the same issue from the point of view of third sector, particularly my experience over the years in community economic development. And it probably started, as far as I can remember, when I was working on Teesside in the 1980s, around about 1986. At the time, I was a community development worker in the central Middlesbrough, and I was very much involved in an organisation called Respond, which was the church's response to Cleveland's industrial crisis. If you remember the late 80s, you know it was a time of higher unemployment and a lot of long-term employment, and that's what we were addressing. And that is a whole set of stories that I can tell another time. But during that period, I went to a seminar in County Durham. I believe it was in Eckington. It was a very long time ago, around about 1986. And but that seminar, and I must have been to hundreds of seminars over the years, but that seminar in particular has stayed in my mind. It was delivered by two Americans who were visiting Britain at the time, and they talked about community development corporations. And really, I took away two insights from that seminar that has stayed with me to this day and really inspired me in my future work. And first of all, it was simply about the purpose of community development corporations. They were a growing movement in the United States, and still going today, and I will try and remember to put a link to a website about modern ones below this video when it finishes. But their purpose is to build assets in the community. Now, there's a lot of debate about asset building. One of the big issues many community organisations face when they build assets is that they often mistake a building for an asset. Now, a building can be an asset if it generates sufficient income to cover its expenses. If it can't do that, then it isn't an asset, it's a liability. So one of the big challenges community organisations have is asset building, is local asset building. But asset building is possible. A lot of entrepreneurs build assets for themselves and their families. They will rent out property, or they deal in stocks and shares, or there are various other, usually classified as intellectual property, ways of generating a steady income. And when that income from investments exceeds the outgoings, then you have, in a genuine sense, wealth. But the same thing can apply to communities as applies to individuals. So the question really is, how do you set about asset building? And the way that they did it in the 1980s through the community development corporations was with support from foundations. Now, foundations are an American phenomenon. They're not found in the UK. They are similar to charities, but foundations are attached to a particular business. The business invests some of its property in the foundations, and they get tax incentives to do that. So then, when the Community Development Corporation or some other community organisation approaches the business, they can do a deal, and the business can help them build their assets by investing financially, but also providing the expertise that the community organisation needs. So private community collaboration is very common in the States, and I believe is actually very common in a lot of other countries as well. We're a bit different in Britain, and particularly in England, where the natural allies of community organisations are generally seen to be the local authority. So the local authority provides support to community organisations, usually through applying for funding from various types of funding organisation. So that was one major difference. The relationship between community organisations and the private sector in the States is very different. It was very different in the 1980s, and it's still very different today. The second difference was something that those two seminar leaders said that had a major impact on me. There must have been about 50 people present in that room. And they said, if this seminar was happening in the United States, you people would not be here. Because the people who were in the room were development workers from all over the region. In the States, the people who would be present would be representatives of the foundations and community activists. And part of the purpose of the seminar would be for them to do deals together, to meet, to network and do deals together. Whereas in the UK, the purpose of the seminar was to provide inside information for the people who stood between communities and the local authority and the funding bodies. So where were the development workers? Or where would the development workers be in the States? Well, we asked them that, and they said, well, they would be back at the community development corporations administering the project. So they would actually do the work, including training local people, but they were not involved in the strategic decision making. That was left to the activists who formed alliances with the foundations. Now this, at the time, was a great revelation to me. I think those two principles are still important. It tells a lot about what has gone wrong in community development in this country. You can read more about my thoughts on that in my free book that you can find if you sign up on my website. It was interesting, though, to discover at that meeting that there were several projects in the UK that were attempting to replicate the community development corporations. In the UK, they're called community development trusts. I believe there are still some development trusts around. But at the time, they were just starting. Most notably, there were two trusts in Manchester. The first was called Miles Platinum in Ancoats, and the second was called Moss Side and Hume. Moss Side and Hume, for example, was working in alliance with four businesses. One of them was Kellogg's, another was Post Office Counters, and I think the other two were banks, but I can't remember which ones. So that seminar got me interested in community economic development, and it was several years from there. That was around about 1986, 87. It was several years to 1992 when I got an opportunity to put this interest into action. And I became a community economic development worker for Industrial Mission in South Yorkshire in the Attercliffe area of Sheffield. At the time, there were far fewer community economic development projects around, but there were several development trusts in Sheffield. Some of them still exist today, some have sadly disappeared, and over that time, I was there from 92 to 98, we set up Attercliffe and Darnall Community Enterprises, which did very well. It It's noted for its sound management approach to business. And it lasted about 10 years. I was only involved until '98 and was far away when it finally closed sometime about 10 years later. I want to tell you about something that happened quite early in that work. And it must have been in 1993, less than a year after I started, when we arranged a visit to Community Business Scotland. The visit was for me as the worker and for local activists. So we travelled together to Scotland. Community Business Scotland was an umbrella group, and its members were community businesses across Scotland. We visited Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Stirling, and various other places to see what was going on. And the main point that I want to take away from that was the distinction between community business and community enterprise. And this was a big debate that was going on at the time, and I still believe it is relevant today, even though perhaps some of the energy has died down. A community business aims to employ staff. That is how they put it. To employ staff implies that you are making through trade sufficient money to pay them on the monthly or weekly basis. The emphasis wasn't so much on making profits. Most of them made very little profit, but what profit they did make, they contributed to a community organisation in their neighbourhood. Their main concern was to employ staff. That was their focus, and that is what they saw as their contribution to the community, their prime contribution. Community enterprise, on the other hand, aims to meet specified social ends, most likely through trade or trading activities, but their focus is on those social ends. And so it is outputs that are crucial and not so much profit, which means that they are grant aided. Their funding is external and they have to produce the outputs to show the grant awarding bodies that they are deserving of their support. Let me give you an example. If you imagine a community cafe, if it's run as a community business, then it will have sufficient customers who pay enough money to pay the staff wages, plus the overheads, plus the other costs. For a community enterprise, when we visited one, I think it was in Edinburgh, we did the tour. Its social aim was to help education the disadvantaged young people to work. And they had 4 business activities attached to it. One of them was making tofu, I remember, sandwiches, can't remember the third one, and the fourth one was a cafe. And we went into the cafe for lunch, and we queued up, and we took our meal and sat down at the table with the manager of the community enterprise. And somebody made a remark. They said, "These portions are huge, they're massive." And the manager replied, "Oh yes, portion control is something that we've got to address." Now that would never happen in a business. The fact is that it wasn't particularly urgent in the community enterprise because their funding was coming from outside. They were not dependent on the proceeds from trade to break even. And so portion size was not really an issue, just something they needed to get round to someday. So that distinction, I think, is really important. I really do not want to say that one approach is better than the other, but it is important that we understand which approach we're using. So we set up Atticus & Darnall Community Enterprises in the late 1990s. I think our biggest mistake, and this is looking back in retrospect, a lot of it went really well. Our biggest mistake was that we did not form close partnerships with businesses. We had numerous opportunities, but we wanted to go it alone as a community organisation. We did not see business as part of the community. It was another external agency like the local authority. I think that was a big problem. After that, I worked for a few years in Rotherham as a development worker, and then I moved on to become responsible for community project grants for the Methodist Church across the whole of England, Scotland and Wales. I did that for about 8 years. So when I was made redundant in 2011, one of the things I discovered as I began to really pay attention again was the prevalence of another type of organisation called a social enterprise. And indeed, the term social enterprise seems to have sort of overwhelmed all the other development trusts, community businesses, and community enterprises, and so on. So, what is a social enterprise? Of different types of organisation. And the clue is in the word social. It isn't community. So a social enterprise may recognise a group of beneficiaries such as people with mental health problems, young people who are educationally disadvantaged and need to get into work, whatever it is. And they provide a service by trading for those people. That is certainly one model of a social enterprise. Some social enterprises are actually based in neighbourhoods, so it does tend to cover quite a range of different types of organisation. Are they community businesses or community enterprises in the Scottish definition? I would say largely they appear to be community enterprises with, in addition to income from grants, some degree of trading going on. This is sometimes called micro trading. And so there is still a deal of grant dependency. And I certainly have encountered social enterprises where the grant dependency is the main driving force. Look at it this way: an entrepreneur finds a social aim, they draw up a business plan, they submit the business plan, and they get a grant or a loan to support the business. And that is a social enterprise because it has social aims. It does not have to have the beneficiaries involved in the governance of the enterprise. And that was always an important dimension to community business, community enterprise and development trusts. I'm not saying that all social enterprises are structured that way. What I am saying is that the definition is much wider than we would have had it back in the 90s. So, are social enterprises businesses or community organisations? They fall somewhere in between, clearly. Many of them, as the word enterprise might imply, if you go with the Scottish debate, are grant dependent. And so, in some respects, they're more like voluntary sector organisations than businesses. But as I say, there's a lot of difference between different enterprises, and some are more community accountable than others. I think the biggest issue that I have now with social enterprises, and I'm talking about the ones that are committed to a neighbourhood particularly, is that they underplay the role that conventional businesses can play in the community. And this is really important because social enterprises have two major limitations. First of all, they are voluntary organisations in the sense that they are present in only a few neighbourhoods. So their reach will be in the neighbourhoods where they're based, and they are not part of any sort of wider understanding of community development across the city. The second limitation is that even in the neighbourhoods where you find community enterprises, they only address part of the local economy in the neighbourhood. And I wonder whether for the future we need to be looking much more closely at how businesses can collaborate with community organisations to set up social enterprises. If businesses and community organisations can together identify local needs, identify the existing assets in the area, and therefore the assets that are needed to meet the local needs, then this would increase the reach of a social enterprise. It would bring a social enterprise in as a collaboration between business and community. That is my vision for social enterprise, and I wonder whether anywhere has actually managed to do it already. It will be fascinating to find out. The key to this is understanding the mutual benefit when businesses work together and when businesses work together with the community. Mutuality tells us that my business benefits when all the other businesses benefit. So when we work together to put a community centre in the middle of a community, that increases footfall for all the businesses, as well as bringing a further benefit to the community. Now, I'm going to go much deeper into the topic of mutuality next time, because I think it unlocks the future as well as the past of many of our neighbourhoods. So that is my talk for today, and if you do have any comments, please put them in the comment box below. I'll be very happy to answer them, and I look forward to seeing you at my third and final workshop in this series, which will take place in a fortnight's time on the 18th of January, where I will be talking about cooperatives and mutuality and how we keep money circulating in the economy. So thank you for watching.